Isn't it a shame? Our main character is currently fighting their father, while they know oh so little about their mother. What's up, guys? All up here, and we want to do a nice little breakdown and discussion about, honestly, probably the most wasted dynamic in all of Jujutsu Kaisen that has literally boundless potential behind it in Big Jaku and Itadori Yuji. But we have so much to talk about in so little time, so let's not waste any more time and let's hop right into it. And Amy, are you ready? 3, 2, 1, go. What's up, guys? That guy with a pencil here. Fun fact, be able to have it on me and keep it on me at all times. Another fun fact. Kenjaku is Yuji Itadori's mother. Of course, he's currently, or at least before he was inside the body of a certain Kaori Itadori and gave birth to Yuji Itadori. Very specifically, as we found out recently, Kenny Ninjas give birth to any old Yuji Itadori. He gave birth to Yuji Itadori with a finger pre-packaged, pre-sealed inside that big old girthy boy. So, Kenny obviously has a very important direct connection to our main character in Yuji Itadori. You don't necessarily get any more direct than your mama. Like, you kind of start there, like everyone does. I mean, you start as two separate genetic pieces, but once you start, you're in your mama. And notably, that's a pretty big thing, a pretty big deal, arguably even a bigger deal than the father, especially considering Kenjaku's general role in the narrative. Naturally, Kenjaku kind of is the in-narrative or in-universe author of Jujutsu Kaisen. Kenjaku is responsible for basically the entire series as we know it. Without Kenjaku, there would be no Sukuna Fingers, there would be no Culling Game, there would be no Sealed Gojo, there would be no Unsealed Gojo, there would be no Reincarnated Sorcerers at all. Kenjaku is the origin point, the beginning and the end. Of course, there are other characters who have massive amounts of importance, undeniable importance so heavily stated and so valuable that it's basically impossible to remove them from the narrative as well. But I'd say in terms of all the characters, more than Toji, more than Gojo, heck, arguably enough, even more than Sukuna, Big Jaku is the most important character in JJK, arguably even more than the child he created. And also, the child he created is one of the most important characters in JJK. In terms of modern JJK, you kinda cannot have this series without Yuji. Shock horror. I know a bunch of people don't believe that. They're like, oh, Yuji, he's not that strong. Oh, he's not really the main character. Megumi's the main character. Yuda's the main character. Gojo's the main character. You cannot tell the story of Jujutsu Kaisen without Yuji. He is a fundamental aspect of it. From all the way to chapter 1 to all the way to, at the time of recording, chapter 257, Yuji is our main character. He is fundamentally important. So we have the in-narrative author in Big Jaku, the person who literally wrote the plot as we know it to this day. And we have the main victim of Big Jaku, the person whose whole existence is centered around one of Kenjaku's side or possibly main plans and being a vessel and or cage for Ryoma and Sukuna. We have these two super crazy characters, and not only do we have these two super crazy characters in the general sense that they both exist in the same narrative, our main character and one of our main villains, our main narrative or in-narrative author, but we're tying them so strictly that they are literally mother and son. Like, they are straight up one family line. This is Kaori Itadori. This is Kenjaku. And without her, without them, there would be no Yuji. So obviously, that's a really big deal. Arguably, even a bigger deal than the reveal that Sukuna is in fact Yuji's father. In a way, roundabout, curse energy-wise. I know he's technically Unkuna, but once again, as I said before, curse energy speaking, Sukuna's kind of Yuji's dad. I know it's weird, because it kind of makes a lot of things weird, but don't worry about it. Kenjaku is Yuji's mom. And you all know what the crazy thing is? I think the only time, I'm being completely real, the only time we ever see these two interact is right here at the end of Shibuya. That is it. We never, and I mean never, ever, get to see these two characters interact again. Like, legitimately, these two characters go on to do big, massive, crazy, gargantuan money moves in terms of their narrative heft and their importance. Obviously, Sukuna is still inside Yuji and thusly is a massive proxy for Yuji, and Yuji goes on to have multiple fights after this, and Big Jaku goes on to have multiple fights after this point after he ends up setting up the conditions for the Culling Games and all that, but this is their only interaction. And notably, this interaction is barely paced between Yuji and Kenjaku. While they do have this entire chapter to themselves, you know, good old-fashioned mother-son talk, where they sort of hang out and chat a little bit, and Kenny starts dropping the lore, he starts his yapalicious nature a little bit, and we have this little battle where Kenny gets to show off the potency of cursed spirit manipulation and all that. Notably, Kenny doesn't even fully acknowledge Yuji. At least not as anything important in this chapter. As ultimately, Kenny's kind of just dropping exposition for us. Once again, an in-narrative author kind of explaining one of the in-narrative abilities in cursed spirit manipulation and giving us a little fun fact about Geto possibly winning, or just confirmed to be winning, over Yuta back a year ago in Shinjuku and Kyoto if he hadn't split his forces in Shinjuku and Kyoto. It's sort of a show-off for cursed spirit manipulation, not necessarily the dynamic between this mother and son. And of course, that's natural. While you definitely could hint at the time in 133 where this takes place that we know that they're mother and child based on Choso's reactions, it still isn't hardline confirmed. And I can understand why Getty doesn't want to fully go into that, and why they save it for here. A whole 10 chapters later in 143 where Yuji finally remembers his connection to Kenjaku, as in his mother having the stitches on his head. But with that being the case, we once again get to see that there was real thought and real potential behind the strengths of this dynamic. This isn't something that kind of just was all me or all anyone else was expecting. It was something that kind of gets highlighted as early as 136, where Kenjaku, especially in comparison to another one of his children in Choso, actually really shows out a little bit and is like, hey, I'll be real with you, Yuji Itadori. Goodbye. I expect much from you. And this isn't the only time something like that gets dropped either. Leaping many, and I mean many chapters into the future, we actually also get this whole statement, where Kenjaku kind of reveals that ultimately Yuji Itadori, while quote-unquote doesn't have a specific role, is extremely pivotal. Pivotal? Lord. Pivotal. As he says, you could say being a vessel is his role. And that's already in place. Yuji Itadori is like a fire signaling the start. As long as he and Sukuna are alive, the chain of curses will never end. He's the eye of the storm of a new age. So, I know that seems extremely contradictory, right? Oh, Kenny just said he has no role, but then proceed to call him the eye of the storm, the starting point, the flare that will guide the future. In a way, this is some of the most glazing Kenny's ever given anybody. It's literally just him and Sukuna, and I guess by proxy Gojo through through Kenny's plan to seal Gojo. Those are the three characters in the entire series that Kenny's ever glazed the importance of, glazed respect on, has put weight in terms of. Obviously Tengen as well. So I guess technically that's 4, but look at who Yuji's being compared to by they mama. They're being compared to King of Curses, Ryomen Sukuna, and of course we go on to later find out that Yuji kind of is the kid of King of Curses, Ryomen Sukuna, or at least twin brother, meaning legal kid in terms of cursed spirit, energy, weird stuff. But he's being compared to Sukuna, King of Curses, Tengen, a mortal sorcerer responsible for the entire series as we know it in terms of its power system, and Gojo Satoru, who a lot of people view as the main character and is also responsible for the fundamental way the world operates in the modern day. So even Kenny fully acknowledges that, yes, Yuji is important. Kenny does have some interest in what they could be. They're the eye of the storm, the starting point, the nexus point, the nebula that almost all of the cursed energy and the entire world will form around. But we just never get to see them actually talk or, engage further. And don't get me wrong, part of me understands why. Once again, ultimately, Sukuna and Yuji is the main villain dynamic. Naturally. And Sukuna and Yuji have enough direct animosity towards each other and enough of a deep-seated relationship that you could definitely argue maybe putting Kenjaku in there as well would sort of muddle the narrative a bit and sort of take away between the Sukuna and Yuji dynamic. And obviously the way this series is paced, it's actually kind of hard to fit in Kenjaku into any more interactions with Yuji. Which is true. Once again, we sort of immediately leap into Culling Games. And then once we get through Culling Games, we immediately leap into Shinjuku Showdown. And obviously there's no time in between. And during Shinjuku Showdown, the main worry is Sukuna. It's not actually going to be Kenjaku. That's why Big Jaku was handled basically as an afterthought off screen. Well, not off screen, but on screen. But once again, the scale of Jaku and the scale of Sukuna as threats is completely different. So I get it. But with all that importance, with both of the weight that both of these characters have on the narrative as the author, their direct familial relationship in mother and son, the fact that Kenjaku themselves places so much importance on Yuji as a sort of nexus point, a nebula that everything will rotate around, and the fact that the whole idea of Choso and Yuji's connection is based on their ties to Kenjaku, and Choso has been fundamentally important to Yuji's development, and even this active battle, considering he's the reason Yuji's able to use certain things like piercing blood, it feels like the Kenjaku and Yuji dynamic just doesn't get enough play. And it felt like there should have been more for how much there could be. We could actually get a proper connection and possible explanation for why Kenjaku did this. How Kenjaku properly feels about Yuji. If there truly is any sort of real, genuine affection, considering while Yuji does admittedly get the Choso treatment a bit, with, how hard their mama bullies him, at the same time, he's still left alive. He still is treated. There still is great things that he expects very specifically from Yuji. This isn't just BT dubs, you're the vessel of Sukuna, it'd be like that, it'd be like that. He says specifically, goodbye, Yuji Itadori. I expect much from you. He separately addressed Sukuna right after this. So there was clearly interest. Interest that lasts well after the point that this battle got underway. Or that battle had happened, that dynamic had occurred, we had laid the groundwork for something juicy, scrundily-umptious, fat, thick, and hefty, in terms of a proper dynamic between mother and son. They're both extremely important characters to the way the narrative operates, from main character to main villain and main in-series writer. But we get nothing. And don't get me wrong, I do like the dynamic that we get between Choso and Kenjaku. And I do ultimately think, considering the drastic scale of the narrative, it makes sense to give Choso more and not funnel too much onto Yuji and sort of make Kenjaku Choso's main antagonist. Because, once again, Yuji already has Sukuna. And obviously, in a battle manga, if you're going to have two characters spend a lot of time on each other, they're most likely going to have to be battling, and Gege probably didn't want to do that. Once again, Yuji is specifically a hard counter to a very weakened Sukuna. Yuji and Kenjaku is a weird matchup to discuss, I'll readily admit. But I think the narrative had put enough weight behind the characters in terms of their in-series weight and the hypothetical dynamic that could come out of a mother and son, being direct opposites, one creating the other for a specific purpose, and the other either A, directly filling into that purpose, or B, directly opposing it, depending on how you view Yuji's role and how Kenjaku would think about how Yuji's been playing their role. All of that is laid there. But unfortunately, it's all reduced to subtext. And subtext that really gets such a little hint of active text that I'm not sure if Gege was ever going to do anything with it. Like, don't get me wrong, the big hefty hints that are dropped in 133 all the way up to 203 are massive. They're big, they gave me hope for something of this dynamic. But the question is it worth it? Is it worth trading off? Because it would have to be a trade-off based on how the narrative is paced. So while I agree, and I do believe that Kenjaku and Itadori had infinite potential to be a really good dynamic between hero and villain, if we're truly going to make Sukuna the end-all be-all, and hypothetically have the merger be something like a final wrap-up threat that Yuji needs to deal with, then I guess Kenjaku not having such a dynamic is okay, considering how little time we have to spread across so many characters and how much focus has to go clearly into this dynamic. But now the question becomes, is there any hope for it? Kenjaku is still a very important character, and a character whose ramifications on the narrative are endless, to the point where they're being discussed as recently as 257 and the implications for Yuji's entire existence. All of that is born of Kenjaku. And the merger is still up in the air. It is ultimately a product of Kenjaku, and it's very likely it could happen soon. So, is there absolutely no hope to see more of this dynamic? Most likely. I'm like only a 1% chance on Kenny actually coming back or doing anything or even having any sort of further connection with Yuji. But ultimately, I still do think that's a shame. There are many instances of wasted potential, or sacrifice potential, or lost potential, or void potential, as I've come to call it with JJK, where characters sort of need to fall into the void, either A, to develop other characters, or to B, allow the plot to progress. And Kenjaku and Yuji's dynamic is one of the biggest examples of void potential. A mother and a son, responsible for the narrative as we know it, unable to meet, for how the narrative is structured based on the whims of the mother, separates the son. and the mother. And that's unfortunate. It feels like Yuji lost the proper conclusion for someone who's so pivotal to who they are and the life that they live. And ultimately, I do hope that he gets enough out of his dad. And that his dad will allow him to vent what could not be vented to his own mother. However, that's what I think. Please let me know what you guys think in the comment section down below. Do you think that I'm overestimating this, that Kenjaku and Yuji's dynamic never would have been that important or that interesting to explore? Do you think Kenjaku wouldn't have had too much care about Yuji? Do you think Yuji wouldn't have had too much care about Kenjaku? Do you think this falls in sort of like a Sukuna is Yuji's uncle biologically and father cursed energy-wise, or Yuji just really wouldn't care and would still try to punch him, and thusly the dynamic was worth wasting? Or do you think there's more potential, or even the slightest bit of hope that this potential could be possibly explored further through the mysteries of the merger? Please let me know all that and more in the comment section down below. If you made it all the way to the end of this video, please leave Mama Don. What was I about to say? Leave Mama Donna. I don't know what that even means, but Mama, the word Mama, and then Donna, D-O-N-N-A. Why? I have no clue. But leave Mama Donna in the comment section down below. And thank you so much for watching. Please remember to leave a like, share, comment, and subscribe. And make sure you hit that little notification bell so you do not miss out on any videos that come to the channel. Also, I do have a Patreon below where you can support me for as low as $1 a month. Things like exclusive videos, early content, and more. You'll sign up to become a member of the channel for as low as $3 a month to get the same perks and more. Some of those perks will include the live reactions to the very next chapter of Jujutsu Kaisen, ad-free variations of all my videos, and if you become a $25 Patreon, $25 member, you can order whatever video you want. Also, I do have the link to my Ko-Fi in the description down below if you want to make a one-time donation or a one-time video request. And I'd like to thank you so much for watching once again, and I hope you guys have a wonderful day. This is Dad with a Pencil, writing off. I would like to give a thank you to our $3 members: so Connor Plays, Greyhound, At Kids Void, Astro, Eternal Flame, Red Wolf 4765, G Prosper, and Paris Arnold. And I'd like to give a thank you to our $5 patrons: Steron, Sean, Midnight Lord 21, Kevin, and Igneel. And I'd like to give a big old thank you to our $7 members: Autumn Mornings Lazo and Sick Addiction. And I'd like to give a big old thank you to our $10 member, Robbie Uchiha. And I'd like to give a gargantuan thank you to our $10 patrons: Panda Goat, Joaquin, and Idemokami. And I'd like to give a gargantuan scrumdiddlyumptious thank you to our $25 patron, ChinaDoll09. And I'd like to give another gargantuan gargantuan, I have no idea what that word. Thank you to our $25 patron, Calvin Elder.